I just want people to know that you have 3 national championships, 29 straight appearances in the NCAAs, and 19 New Jersey Athletic Conference championships, correct?
Yes.
And I guess your season was canceled this year.
Yeah, our whole school was remote, so we were virtual. So we had no one on campus. Nobody was playing. We weren't even training. And actually, I haven't been in my office since spring break, which was March 13th. So the whole athletic department, which is difficult, was just put on hold. You're going 90 miles an hour and getting ready for preseason. And the next thing you know is that you're not, school's not going to happen. You're not coming back. You're not training. So it's difficult.
Is there any chance of them playing in the spring at all?
We're on schedule to. The presidents have just approved it. The schedule is out. My only fear is if this pandemic goes sideways, is that going to be taken off the table? But we're scheduled to. So that our second semester, spring semester, starts February 1st. There's going to be, I think, around 1,700 or 2,000 kids on campus. They're going to be testing. So the athletes and coaches 3 days a week, the regular students on campus and faculty once a week. And we're scheduled to play just our conference tournament. Our conference schedule, which would be 9 games. At this point, anything is good.
I know. The high school team I coached, we played 7 games in the fall, and I was thrilled with that. Anyway, I know you went to Ewing. I didn't realize, though, that you played basketball and soccer.
I did.
And you're all state in both, correct?
I was. I love them both. I do.
I'm glad you said that because I'm a big proponent of kids not focusing on one sport. And I'm wondering if you feel the same way.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think to do the same thing repetitively day in and day out over time becomes counterproductive. I think if you can cross train and play different sports, I look at some of the premier players that we've had, that I think of Jenny Hart, who was a 3-time All-American and a National Player of the Year. She was a phenomenal lacrosse player. And, growing up, she played club soccer here and there, played lacrosse, was just a super athlete. And just being involved in both of those activities for her, she was always fresh when she came to soccer. She always had a different perspective to it. She was hungry for it. I think I'm all for it. Like I encourage it.
Do you still have girls who play more than one sport?
We don't now. I shouldn't say that. We have a couple that run track, but what has happened now is that because we train in the spring also, that those kids, want to stay involved and want to get better and continue to improve. So, but track's a unique animal where they kind of do their own, they train on their own, they do their own workout. It's not a full team thing. So it works for us.
Yeah, I even encourage some of my high school kids to run track too. I think that's important.
Yes.
So I saw you went to Alderson Broaddus, and I'm old enough to remember that at one point that contingency of West Virginia universities were as good as any teams in the country.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm sure you had a real rich tradition with Davis and Elkins, but I was just curious how you found out about Alderson and then decided to attend.
Well, to be honest, I started at the University of New Hampshire. So I went there and I finished my freshman year, and my beginning of my sophomore season at mid-year there, my dad had a heart attack. Our coach had left. My roommate had left. So I was actually home getting ready to transfer to, it was then Trenton State College.
Right.
So I was playing indoors on Wednesday night at Mercer County Community College, which they still do today. And Bobby Gray was playing, and he said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm going to play for Gary Hindley over at Trenton State College. He said, I just got the job at Alderson Broaddus. He said, you want to come down and just look at it? So I went down, met the players, and I stayed, and I loved it. And that soccer-wise, the NAIA back then with Davis and Elkins and West Virginia Wesleyan and Alderson Broaddus was as good as it gets.
I know. I remember knowing that there were a lot of international players.
Yes.
Playing on both teams who maybe even had professional experience before they came to play in college.
Yes.
But anybody that went to those small schools, they loved it, and they can't rave enough about how great the competition was.
It was great for me. It was a good fit. So I graduated, and then I came back to Trent State College to get my master's and work with Gary, and it was good. The timing of everything just worked out.
That's great. Did you start coaching right away when you graduated?
I did. I was a GA with Gary. So I was on the men's side. I started on the men's side for a number of years, and so I was a graduate assistant, and then Gary moved on to the Pennsylvania Stoners with Calman Chapo. So he left, and they hired Rick Dell, who was a longtime assistant there. So Rick took over, and Rick and I worked together. Our staff was actually very good. I thought it was Rick, it was myself, it was Jimmy Dunn. Yeah, it was Matt. I can't think of his last name, but it was good. So I was able to learn from Gary, which I thought was invaluable. And then, as conscious and detail oriented as Rick Dell was, that was another plus. So the experience I had with those guys was fantastic. So I started coaching, right away.
But you were coaching guys when you got out.
Yes.
And 7 years of coaching?
Yes. Yep. I was on the men's side for 7 or 8 years. Absolutely.
So, and then the opportunity to coach the girls came up and you decided to take it.
It did. It's funny, before I even took the college or the Trenton State job, I was at Penn. So I was hired at Penn as the first women's coach.
Really?
Yeah. So at the University of Pennsylvania, they were just initiated a varsity women's soccer as a varsity sport. So they had the club team, and I was hired to transition the club team into the varsity team and join the Ivy League. So I was going there. I couldn't stand the commute, and out of the blue, the AD who was at Trenton State College had called me, said, "Hey, I just want to let you know we got approved for women's soccer, and I know you just took the job there at Penn, but if you have any interest, we'd love to have you." And I literally turned my car around and went right to campus, because it's 7 minutes from my house. Do you know what I mean? It was just perfect. And the commute I live in Yardley, Pennsylvania, so the commute down 95 into Philly was dreadful.
I know.
It didn't matter what time you went. It was just dreadful.
Yeah, we have a road called the Blue Route where I live, and it's that way every day. So
yes.
I can understand why.
It's painful.
How much was there a big transition going from coaching the men to coaching the women?
There was, in a way, but in a refreshing way. I thought when I took over the women and we started training and playing like sponges, they couldn't get enough. And, they just wanted to learn. They were open. They were inquisitive. They were as hardworking as you could find. And, the biggest thing was their self-confidence. And we still fight that today, because if I brought in my office the best player in the history of our program, Kim Faust, 2 national championships, 4-time All-American, National Player of the Year, and you asked her, say, "Hey, Fausti, I think you're pretty good. I heard you're a pretty good player." She would put her head down and say, "Yeah, my teammates are good." And yet if we brought in the worst guy on the men's team and he had one leg, he could spend a half hour telling you and I, you know what I mean? He's the greatest thing since sliced bread. The coach is crazy. He doesn't get it. So that part of it I thought was very, very refreshing. And, it's been a good fit for me all the way since we started.
That's great. Listen, are there any moments within your coaching career that brought you the most satisfaction?
Well, there is every year when I go to graduation, and I'm being perfectly honest. I mean, we can talk about the wins and you can talk about, but when you see the kids who come in as freshmen and mature and graduate and see what they've become, to me, that's satisfying, and that's really rewarding, and the success that we've enjoyed on the field is a byproduct of those type of kids. So that part I really like.
So it sounds like even though you're a D3 program, you're with these girls all year long. I mean,
yes. Yeah, it is as comprehensive as you'll find.
So you're doing something in the winter and the spring, in addition to playing your season.
Correct. So, and our season is, as far as our level is pretty long, because we check in for preseason in the middle of August, and, 13 of the 29 years, we've been in the Final Four. It's almost half the time you're flying back December, so you're August 12th to December 6th and 7th. So ours is longer than most people can only dream of. That ends, kids finish finals. So that when you think of it, you get back on campus December 6th or 7th, and finals are done, school's done the 16th or 17th of December. So, they come back second semesters, they meet with strength and conditioning. So they're involved with there. And then as soon as, our NCAA allotment of time starts, we're back again training in the spring. So they're, lifting training all winter and spring, getting ready for preseason for us.
So I guess with the success you had and the tradition is attached, your expectations are pretty high every year, I would suspect.
They are. And they are. And I don't know if that's a good thing or that's a bad thing, because there's been some years where we've finished 22-1 and not won the national championship. And, we're walking around with our head down, complaining and bitching and moaning. And we're a byproduct of who we are, and winning a national championship is what we set out to do, every single time we step on campus in preseason. So, that's the ultimate goal for us.
Did the upperclassmen have an impact on the new players coming in each year?
They do. They've helped create such a phenomenal culture and chemistry within the group. These are the expectations, these are the demands, and this is how we're going to do it. And everyone kind of follows in line, and then the next group kind of takes over. We do something called an accountability partner. So when a freshman commits, and let's say, Mike Barr commits and you're an education major. So I have one of my upperclassmen who is an education major is your accountability partner. So that person stays with you for the full year, guide you into preseason, is going to answer, you're going to say, what's the best meal plan, or where do I get, and, what's the strength training, or how do I do this? So that person stays with you the full year. And even when school starts, so when your classes start, you're going to lunch, she's going to meet you and say, hey, this is where we sit and this is where you go. So that accountability. And then the following year, you're going to be somebody else's accountability partner. So that structure allows, growth within each group, and it helps us.
Is that one of your recruiting tools when you're talking with parents about the how much you're into their daughters playing and going to school and watching out for them?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's a big part of their success. And it's also, let's be honest, for most kids, that transition is hard.
Yeah.
It physically, psychologically, it's difficult. So to have somebody to be able to lean on, it just makes it that much more easier for them.
So how do you actively recruit all over the country, or primarily Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland?
Primarily the tri-state area. That's been very, very good for us. Jersey, obviously, because of the in-state tuition, but we've had our share of Eastern Pennsylvania kids. Yeah.
Good. Do you have any transfers coming in at all from D1 or D2? We
do. We don't get as many as you would think, or as I would hope, but yeah, we do. We've had in the past, we have one this year. So we normally get one or two mid-year that'll come in. And it's, I think you're only going to see more and more with this limited amount of recruiting where you can actually see kids and kids are making decisions. I think in the following year, 21 and 22, I think there'll be a ton of transfers. I do.
Yeah, I think so.
Unfortunately.
Too. So you're handling the quarantine. Okay. How about recruiting? How's that been this year for you?
It's been difficult. Fortunately this class, the 21 class, was already done. And we've picked up some stragglers and a transfer. But the 22s going forward we're way behind. We just haven't had a chance. We haven't had any ID camps. We haven't had a chance to get out and see kids in the environment that we really like to see them. I feel bad for them. It's really, it's put them in a tough spot. And it's really, in my mind, has almost forced them to be really self-serving on their own, to go out and really start to dig, because the days of, going to this tournament or being seen there, they're not happening. So they have to assume more of the responsibility, and really get after it and see what they can to dig up.
With the quarantine, if you weren't playing in the spring, would the kids have an opportunity to spend another year of eligibility? Have they talked about that at all?
They have. So they've been granted another year. And that's the other thing that really throws a wrench into recruiting. So if you look at my team now, so we graduate in the spring, we have 8 seniors. Half of those kids are coming back. So there's 4 kids that we didn't plan on having. I mean, we're welcoming them because 2 of them are all Americans. They're coming back. And we have this whole 2020 class, which I haven't really seen. Some of those kids I haven't seen in 2 years. They're there. And you add on 2 more transfers. And now in the fall, you're going to have the whole 2021 class.
Jeez.
It's just a backlog of all of these kids. And it's no one's fault. I mean, let's be honest, so, we've talked about expanding rosters. Can we carry more kids? And that whole thing is a conversation that we're exploring, right now. I
would almost think you'll have to increase your roster.
Yes. Yes. But that's not an easy conversation. No. Do you know what I mean? In athletic departments nowadays, fortunately on the women's side, it's a plus because of football and other sports. So in Title IX, so I think we're going to be okay. But yeah, I mean, the expanded roster part for a lot of people is going to be critical. Yeah.
So do you play a certain system or style of play, or do you alter things year in, year out, or have you been consistent with your style?
We've been, consistent with very possession. We've played out of 3-5-2 for a while. And last 2 years, we were in a 4-3-3. So we kind of float back and forth, that 2017 or 18, when we were in the Final Four, we played a 3-4-3. We just had those type kids that were so athletic that we could just press all over the place and turn people over. And it worked. But the following year, it wasn't for us. We just didn't have that type of personnel. So we it's all geared to what dictates by the type of kids that we have, and we're not going to force feed, hey, we're going to play this, even though we don't have the personality to do it. So we're pretty flexible.
So a question that I get all the time, and I try to give my best answers. I coached D3 for 3 years at Immaculata. Wasn't anything special. But what do you look for when you go out to recruit a player on the field, for instance?
The kids that do well for us, athletic, can solve problems, get in and out of tight spaces, have a pretty good soccer IQ where they make decisions in the run of the game without, struggling or the coach screaming at them. I mean, you can we've been pretty fortunate, but you can identify those type kids, across the board that feel pretty comfortable on the ball. And the other thing is really for us, position specific. Like I'm a big fan of having left-footed players on the left side. Like we need those type players so our backs can give. So we need a left back. So we're looking for those, a kid who has a little bit of pace that we think can really develop into, if she has a good soccer IQ, we can get her to fit into what we really, really need. So there's a ton of factors. I mean, they have to be good students. They have to be athletic enough where they can play in our system. And the soccer IQ has got to be, pretty much above average to be able to help us.
On a given season, how many freshmen do you start? I know it may depend on different years, but.
I say all the time, like if you don't have freshmen starting, you're not recruiting the right kids. Like you need to, we need to get better. So not this past season, because we didn't play this year before, we had fluctuated between 3 and 4, and we play, I'm a big fan of large rosters anyway, but we play a lot of kids, the more kids you get involved that have ownership in it, the
happier they are. You're right.
The better the chemistry. Absolutely.
You're having right now with the coronavirus and being able to recruit. Can you give some advice to parents on how you would like to be contacted, when you would want to be contacted, the best methodology for getting their daughter's name to you, and that you'll try to get to see her play before you make a decision of recruiting her?
I think the most critical part is they have to be proactive. Like they really, if they're relying on their club coach or their high school coach or someone to go out and they're in trouble. I mean, they have to be proactive, identify the schools that, kind of fit you academically, identify the schools that fit you soccer wise, and the earlier the better. If they're in their just finishing their sophomore year, they should be contacting schools so that as soon as things get up and running and there's ID clinics and there's camps and there's tournaments, that they can get on the radar where we can get out and see them. And it never, when I say earlier the better, because we could be at PDA in the spring here, and I have a gap in between games, and I'm going to say to my assistant, hey, you know what, this EPYSA kid who's a U15 had written us, and they're playing on, so we go over and watch. Do you know what I mean? Let's start the process. Let's just get a feel for where they are. So I don't think, earlier the better, and to be proactive, reach out to the coaches and, include in there, if there's some clips or there's some films you can include. We don't make final decisions on that. Obviously, we need to see the kids play, but I think it can just pique the interest across the board.
I think so too, because I have a couple kids who have wealthy parents. The quality of the videos they're putting together are just amazing.
Yes.
But it's always a highlight type thing. So it's a little different than going out and watching them all. I know you're real proud of your Mercer County Hall of Fame recognition. And can you just give people an idea of what it was like growing up playing soccer in Mercer County at that time?
It was phenomenal. When you talk about players like Mooch and all those guys that were here in this era, it's actually hard to believe that the concentration of phenomenal players in such a small area would even existed. So it didn't matter if you were playing it in a pickup on Sunday at Mercer County Park or wherever you were, or if you're at the Highbow Club, that the game was of quality and it was exceptional across the board. And it's funny because those guys that are still around, they still, middle 50s, early 60s, they're still playing. And there was such a love for it, and it was at such a high level. It was a great experience. And it's hard, you're right, for people who haven't gone through it or understand it or know some of the people that lived in this area then. And I don't want to mention any names and leave people out, but it was outstanding. You couldn't have asked for a better, training environment, no matter where you went.
I know. And with Manny in North Jersey, Jersey was the hotbed back then.
Yes,
it was pretty amazing how many players Jersey produced. And speaking of players, you still believe ODP is a good stepping stone to get into college? It's not as important as it used to be. We're trying to make an effort to make kids who are maybe playing two sports to have the opportunity to play ODP just to get some more recognition. But having an ODP, Olympic Development Program, attached to your resume that you're playing for them, does it make a difference?
I think so. I do. And I was involved in New Jersey ODP for a number of years. I had the 16s and I had the 17s. I do. I think twofold. I think the exposure to college coaches is good. And I think the exposure to different types of training. I think to have a different type of coach, I think it's invaluable. And, historically and traditionally, the training that you get in ODP across the board has been good. It's been very, very good. And I know Eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey it's still very solid. And I do think that exposure and having that on your resume is a plus. I do.
That's great. Here's the last final question. First of all, your answers have been spot on. If I could have written the answers, I couldn't have done it better.
Great minds think alike.
That's just not that. If I have a granddaughter who wants to go to your school, I'm going to push her there. So what individuals had the biggest impact on your coaching and your career and your life, for that matter?
I think those guys that I was involved with early on, when I played it in high school, Andy Greener, was more of a fitness guy. And then when I ended up at Alderson Broaddus, Bobby Gray was really a technical tactician. And the game started to evolve for me. Like, I didn't understand that part of it early on. I didn't. And I was just, I was fortunate enough to be pacey, so I was athletic. But when I got to college, it's just started. And then being under Gary Henley, understanding the aspects of, you know, the expectations and the demands, and here's the culture, and we have to have this, and this, a structure, Joe, for these college kids, and Rick Dell. So all of those guys just kind of, you know, you take bits and pieces, and it formulates in your mind of, hey, I like this, or I didn't like that, and you try to, you know, make it work for us and in our program. So I think there's not one person, but I think it's a collective grouping of the guys that I've been under. And I really say Bobby Gray, because when I got to Alderson Broaddus, and I'm not knocking any of my other coaches, but I wasn't exposed to tactically how the game was played, you know, and it was eye-opening to me. And it was just, you know, something that I wanted to continue to build on and learn. So I've been fortunate enough to be around those guys, you know, that have kind of shaped who I am today and what we learn, what we do.
Is Bob Gray still around?
He retired.
I know he retired to West Virginia for a while, right?
Yeah. He was.
Oh, he's a Marshall.
He was at Marshall for a long time. He left Alderson Broaddus, went to Marshall, had a great deal of success, and then retired. And it's funny because it's usually this week at the convention, you know, that you see everybody. Yeah. And when someone said, well, you know, it's a shame you can't go to the convention and get the sessions. I mean, it's the people that you meet and the people that you see. Do you know what I mean?
You're right. You're right. That's the thing I miss the most too.
Yeah, that's what makes it.
Yeah, I don't even go to the clinics anymore.
Yeah,
I just want to go around and talk to people.
You're absolutely right.
Wonderful.
Invaluable.
Well, it was great talking to you. I promise I'm going to get over to a game if you're playing this spring, if definitely in the fall. And good luck with the rest of your season, and good luck with your career.
Thank you. Hey, congrats again on the award. Well deserved.
Thank you very much. I'll see you.
All right. Take care.
Bye.